Welcome to the Mission Driven Leader, presented by TaleoConnects.com, where we explore the new, unknown, and innovative themes for work and give people the ability to show up resilient every day. Here are your hosts, former Chief Knowledge Officer of NASA, Ed Hoffman, and partner and Vice President of Portfolio Management at Taleo, Laurel Sim.
Well, welcome back to the Mission Driven Leader podcast. Ed, I'm, as always, looking forward to who we have to chat with today.
I'm very excited today. Very, very excited. This is a longtime friend, colleague, and one of my heroes.
Wow, a hero. That's quite impressive. Yeah. I can't wait to find out all of the ins and outs as to that.
And before we get there, you look like you're dressed in a special outfit. What's the occasion?
Oh, Ed, I can't even believe you noticed. Woohoo, go Oilers! Yes, and I am sorry about your New Yorkers, but now you can be an Oilers fan. Yeah,
absolutely. Go Oilers! I'm loving it. Well,
it didn't sound as passionate as I would like it.
I am so passionate. I'm so excited about it. Yeah, it's just
okay. Good.
Hockey tends to give me headaches. My long decades of pain in the playoff season. But it's all good. I've recovered.
Excellent. Okay, I'll let it go. Good.
There you go. So shall I introduce, again, this is someone I'm really excited about. Jordon Sims. Let me make it clear it's Sims, not Sim. That will mess me up during all of today.
I like the start of the name. It's pretty good.
That's right. And Jordon is a founding partner of Imperium Global Advisors. And he's an expert. He gives advice in terms of legislative, political, professional advocacy for global organizations and government agencies. He's recently served as a chief of staff for Congresswoman Kay Granger, who is the senior Republican for the House Appropriations Committee and the most senior Republican woman in the U.S. Congress overall. One of the things that I look up to Jordon is he was a leader in the U.S. Navy, a nuclear-trained submarine officer. So he has the leadership instincts and capabilities of a well-tested leadership machine. In that role, he has been a special advisor to the director of the Navy Nuclear Propulsion program. He's heavily involved in Department of Defense and Department of Energy activities. He has a lot of expertise in terms of working with global corporate and government organizations all around the world, and has a good amount of experience in the Project Management Institute, in the American Management Association, and working with the World Economic Forum. He's worked on, women in management issues for AMA. And of particular interest to me, he is a co-faculty lead for the Columbia University program, Navigating the Future of Work, a leading program in that area. And most important, he is I don't know what the word is, he's a horseman. He owns horses that have run and should have won the Kentucky Derby. Things prevented the horse from doing that, mainly speed. But Jordon, welcome. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast.
I'm not sure if that was an intro, Ed, or an existential crisis.
Wow.
You've done so many things. One of the things seriously that I admire about you is you adapt, you move, you're in different settings. One of the questions probably should be, what haven't you done? But welcome to the podcast. I think you know Laurel and myself pretty well.
Yeah, no, it's great to be back with you guys. And Ed, I'm getting a little self-conscious, just like I do when I travel with you. If anybody really wants to get self-conscious, just travel with a psychologist anywhere. Constantly diagnosing. So I'll start taking a look at my level of focus on my activities, though. Thanks, Ed.
He definitely makes you think about every word.
Oh, yeah.
What accolades? Oh, my God, Jordon. I know you, but I didn't know you, and now I really know you. Wow. That's you got some good schnazel going on there. That's Canadian for it's a filler word, but I love it.
Yeah, and I didn't pipe in too and get you in trouble, Ed, on sitting next to you in an Ottawa Senators game with Laurel either. So
that's true. And I was rooting for the Ottawa Senators at the time. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. I like them. That's good. That's fine. Yeah.
Just making sure.
Yeah. Just as long as you both are cheering for the Oilers going forward, everything will be okay.
Absolutely. If I had a T-shirt, I'd put it on right now. But don't worry.
Well, we do appreciate you wearing clothing, though, so that's good.
It's always a good thing for a podcast. So
oh my gosh,
Jordan,
you have done so much. Yeah. Holy cows.
Yeah. Tell us about the most recent thing. What is a global advisor in terms of why did you start this? Why are you entrepreneurial in this area? And what do you do?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We are pretty proud of our little boutique public affairs firm that we started here in Washington D.C. and we're actually in the process of spinning off a second venture within that stream as well too. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. But it's been good. We've been working inside organizations, as you know. My first kind of role outside the Navy and in the private sector on a large global scale was with the Project Management Institute as part of their leadership team, helping them spearhead their government and corporate relations around the world and a number of strategic initiatives. And then as we kind of went through that cycle and that process, we were consuming quite a few resources, in terms of staying on top of all the different policies we were putting into place or shaping or pursuing for the benefit of the overall profession. And so we had, quite a few, key experts around there. And as we continue to go through these budget cycles and just kind of seeing the general grinder inside an organization that's operating at that level, we realized we could probably do this a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently and optimize it a bit. So I was a client of my lobbyists, obviously at the time. We banded together, worked with PMI, stepped out the side door in a nutshell and picked up PMI as kind of a initial client overall, focused primarily on a large scale initiative in crafting, authoring, and passing the Program Management Improvement and Accountability Act, which kind of became a global benchmark, if you will, for most governments. Laurel, even we spent a lot of time in Ottawa for them, looking at how they could replicate, bringing a variety of different standardized approaches to the project delivery function inside the whole of their public sector. And so that's kind of where we started and picked up from there. And since then, we represent a number of nonprofits, everything from affordable housing to cyber, data, privacy, emerging tech, workforce development, big red sugary beverage companies, which you can probably figure out which one that is. The world's leading quantum chip foundry here based in New York, but for the world, all the way through to a number of different cyber and tech capabilities coming out of Silicon Valley and other areas as well too. So it's been pretty exciting. Everybody thinks it's great and one of the most exciting kind of sexy ventures, to kind of bring new technology into the government. I'll admit, a bit of a double-edged sword. There is a bit of a pushing a rope up a hill aspect and teaching the government new tricks. So that does take a little bit of patience.
Yeah, I am. So for those listening, there was a huge accomplishment that Jordon and his team did for PMI and for the delivery of project management for around the world. That in the United States, they created a certain level of requirement in order to complete project management, and that was certifications of the PMP, even just acknowledgement of program management for organizations federally focused. And Canada, although did not follow suit exactly the same, they started to influence different policy and considerations. And we're noticing that trickle effect around the world, which is great for my company that, I own a project management firm. So I'm like, woohoo, go Jordon. But in general, I think that a lot of what you do for your clients is create that awareness to bodies within governments that don't really understand things to the level that the people asking for the change do. And so you're there to kind of bridge that gap of understanding, create those kind of awareness pieces, and really contribute to the overall knowledge of what the need really is. Maybe I
No, 100%.
oversimplified that, but
that's exactly it. The fundamentals of career pathing, having a dedicated kind of job series, associated competencies with it. I mean, very fundamental blocking and tackling foundational things that were just left to happenstance in a lot of public sector environments. So the U.S. passed that. We were pretty proud of it. I mean, it's a little known fact. There's a lot of, obviously in the U.S. now, there's no shortage of political fervor and fire, burning, and you see it in the news every day. But when it comes down to actually putting rubber on road, a Congress, we're in the 118th Congress now, runs every 2 years, and they reset the Congress to a new number, each year sequentially. On average, only 3% of the legislation introduced in a Congress actually gets passed into law. So to be able to do that within one Congress and not have to reintroduce and start over, that's a little bit of lightning in the bottle. So we caught that, and that was good. And that's in place, and the government's working through it. And we've actually moved on now and are supporting the scaled agile team, specifically on putting agile competencies now around that same kind of framework and building upon that to make sure agilists and agile approaches, not just in software and technology, but the overall agility of the public sector from a day-to-day function, procurement, contracting, all the other core functions, and what that looks like, and being able to better procure some of these technologies. The government struggles with software just in general. I mean, it's just two diametrically opposing worlds that move at completely different paces and completely different cycles. And that whole, rapid delivery of software and constant patching and improvement just does not align well to the glacier, and that's fine. And so we kind of help try to find ways to mesh those gears up where we can, and that's where we've been working on it now. But it's been exciting.
You work on a broad, you have a broad scope of work and clients. It's one of the things that I've always noticed about you.
It is.
What kind of questions, when a government leader comes to you, how is that different than when a industry, particularly an entrepreneurial industry organization, goes to you? Are they asking for the same things or different things? And
two completely different worlds, and it's really highlighting. I mean, to be honest with you, we do very well with the business and the clients and the continued growth, and we're looking at new ventures now in terms of bridging venture capital coming out of Silicon Valley, for example, with some of the transition challenges, specifically the Department of Defense in the U.S. has, but other governments as well too. They have these innovation pipelines and have a hard time with startups having the runway needed to kind of survive the time frame it takes to get transitioned into a program of record and gain that footing. And it's really astounding, the number of technologies and capabilities, despite all the amazing things that you coming from NASA, all the amazing technological marvels we see coming out of the government. Probably only 5 to 10% of what's actually behind the curtain. A lot of them die on the vine that just lose out to the unfortunate grinder of the process, so to speak. And those two questions, it's a great question you ask. When we get approached by industry, it's how, and it is a weird muscle for organizations to understand. And Laurel, you're in private industry as well too. It's a weird muscle for them shaping what their customer needs, wants, and how's they're resourced, right? It's almost like creating a demand signal. So they're looking for speed to market. They're looking for something that somehow aligns to, quarterly forecasts, all of those pressures, and none of those gears or teeth mesh up with the government whatsoever. That's a key challenge. The government, on the flip side, is not asking us for, the speed and the insight and how do we shape and influence demand to our favor, so to speak, right? It's more along the lines of help us provide leading edge SME support, right? Subject matter expertise support. We have reform coming in the areas of cybersecurity for how we procure technology and IT systems, or how we do this or how we do that. We want to make sure that our boss does not look like they're driving with a rear view mirror and putting requirements in from 2017, for example, right? Just because they're not on the leading edge always. They know they can't be. It's just not their job. Smart people, a lot of Ivy League education and legal minds and everything else as well too. They just don't have the bandwidth to stay on the leading edge of everything that's going on out there.
No, but they do need to direct first responders for their country into good practice and good behavior. Otherwise, 100%. They kind of will do what they want to do or what their funding will allow them to do. So they're kind of caught in a bit of a conundrum, really, when you think about it, where it's we got to get caught up. So Jordon, can you help us out? But we also don't have the funding to be as fancy as 100%. Apple. So
100%.
Where do we sit?
Yeah. It's do more with less mindset. And to that point, I would take it a step further. I almost think that do more with less is symptomatic. It's more of a branch. When you get down to the roots of it, like I said, the industry, when they ask us for help, it's speed, navigation. How do we compress timelines? How do we shape to align to business priorities, et cetera, et cetera. It is everything you'd expect from a for-profit, typically, mindset. Even the nonprofits as well too are looking to have mission and purpose driven stuff, but they still want to have measurable impact, right? They want to see ROI for the investment and the effort. The government on the other side is, on the root side of things, is a risk aversity piece. And that's a challenge. It's for us in DC, it's, everybody's litmus test is, how do I avoid being on the front page of the Washington Post, right? How do I, make sure I don't want to be being first of kind, first of flight in something is never a comfortable position for anybody in the public sector. They want to know where else it's been done. Where can I copy and paste it from? What are the lessons learned? So it is a challenge when they don't want to drive with the rearview mirror, but at the same time, the risk aversity aspect of it is pretty paramount, and totally get it, because there is the best of intentions there with the custodianship of the taxpayer dollar. But at the same time, Ed, as you come from a world where we used to just cartwheel rockets off the platform until we figured it out. And obviously we can't do that anymore today. So it's almost a zero tolerance mindset politically. And that's universal, I think, whether it's in Ottawa, Laurel, or here in DC, or the work we do in London, Brussels, around the world. We had a team, down in Delhi. There is a zero tolerance aspect of the public sector mindset that makes innovation, new, and technologically advanced a challenge, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at your colleagues, your team, the organizations that you're supporting through these things, what are the key capabilities? Like if I wanted to become Jordon Sims, not Sim, tomorrow, what do I need to brush up on? Like, what are the things that will kind of elevate me quickly and to excel to your level?
We have a pretty diverse team, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. And I mean that. I mean, you can check out our website. We've got retired admirals. We've got former White House people. We have the entire political spectrum covered. Most of our clients actually find it very refreshing, especially in today's climate, that, the group of us that literally span the entire political spectrum get along well, run a business well, support our clients well, and it's to their advantage. So no matter which way the winds blow, they've got it covered. And I think the one thing I think that is helpful on the intangible side of things, Ed, Ed and I spend a lot of time on the intangibles at Columbia and their impact and value driving in organizations. There's a certain level of just natural humility that the entire team has, even though we all have decades of experience in doing things at the highest levels of government. I feel so much more comfortable when I have Brian from my team, for example, who's Chicago politics, complete opposite end of where I grew up, with Senator Dick Durbin, just completely different, progressive, liberal mindset, from where I'm at. But our clients benefit from it, and they get to see the full 360 coverage of an issue, and where the pitfalls potentially are, how people are going to react to it, what to expect, what type of questions to get, what is going to be the opposition, who's going to be for it, who's going to be against it, et cetera. So I think that's, having that humility to realize, and Ed and I talk about this all the time, that leaders have to be comfortable with the fact that they may not know all the answers, but do they have the right people around them to plug those gaps? And so knowing where your strengths are, knowing where your weaknesses are, making sure that people around you are able to plug those weaknesses, I think are key. And that's what's helpful. It's the same thing at PMI. Ed and I worked together quite a bit there for a long time as well, too. Great team around us. We talked about it all the time. I think the ability to not always know exactly what to do yourself. You don't always have to have your hand on the wheel, but do you know how to put the right people together that can do it, on behalf of the organization? And I think that's where I've seen the most success, and where I've seen it go in the ditch, to be perfectly honest with you, is when I start seeing a lot of leaders focus on what's good for them versus what's good for the organization. And it's just readily apparent. You see it every time, and everything that stinks, doesn't work, isn't going well in an organization, you can almost kind of trace it back to where the organization, the team mindset was not put forth first, if that makes sense. And us, as far as what makes us successful, I'll be honest, I think the way Ed, kind of introduced me, it sounds like an existential crisis. I'm a little, getting self-conscious on it. I think for us, it's, the one thing I do appreciate, and it's like one of those things where you're like, looking back on it retrospectively, and were never really appreciated from your parents, and everything else growing up all the way through from childhood and everything too, is just having a variety of experiences, getting as much exposure as you can to as many different things as possible in your area of focus. So, for us, looking at the fundamental thing we do, we help people navigate policy, whether it's venture capital, technology, mission-driven organizations, big blue chip companies, whatever it is, right? But there's so many different ways to come at that. And so we come at that, myself personally, I've seen it from the DoD. I've seen it from, fortunately enough, from the actual, U.S. diplomatic functions, where we've actually held diplomatic roles as foreign liaison for our chairman of the Joint Chiefs and SECDEF and Secretary of Defense Bob Gates and other folks as well too. So we see the soft power and the hard power side of policy. We come at it from the way some of our startups come at it. We see how lean organizations that are literally myopically focused on what is the one thing that is going to kill our company, and how do we de-risk it and de-scope it and solve that problem first and foremost and move on to the next one, right? It's literally like a cliffhanger hanging off the side of a cliff with one belay left, right? One carabiner. How do I make sure that carabiner doesn't fail so I can keep my company alive and grow from 10 to 20 people and 20 to 40 and so forth and go forward? So just a variety of experiences, I think, is and having that curiosity to soak up what you can from them, I think is what in our world is most helpful, because invariably somebody's going to come at you with a question on something that you just quite haven't seen before, and you have to kind of triangulate it from a variety of different experiences. Sorry, long-winded way of saying.
Well, I have to try to triangulate Ed all the time. Like, it's not easy.
Oh yeah.
It's like, Jordon, like between you and I, like it's a tough slog with this guy.
It is.
Yeah. But all kidding aside, I appreciate the critical thinking, the curiosity,
Yeah.
the knowing your weaknesses part. I think that's not only just important capabilities to have in your industry, but just to be a good leader.
Yeah.
I think those are critical for success points, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And we're coming up to the commercial.
Yeah, so we have. Real quick. We have a real cool technology that we work with, point of care ultrasound, chip based, ultrasound. And I came at it from a technology mindset. Just a great example of a lesson learned. Headstrong, felt confident in it. It's like the size of a man's, razor, handheld razor, right? But you can hook it up to any device, and it's the new stethoscope. It's Butterfly Networks, really amazing stuff out of Boston, Massachusetts. It's up in the space station, Ed. They use it, specifically for triaging up there, as well. It's in the Ukraine. It's all over the DoD, all over the government, the VA, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's using it. And I got stumped, on a healthcare policy issue that I just had not come across before, in terms of, the ability for it to, in the AI, to do things in an automated function, train clinicians, determine gestational age after 4 swipes, of a belly from a pregnant belly from an untrained operator. So, the things that can do for developing economies and, the developing world that doesn't have clinician access, women's health, variety of different things, right? It's really fascinating stuff. And, I got stumped when they asked me point blank. They said, what do we have to do? Congress specifically said, what do we have to do to get this into more county clinics, free clinics, your local drugstore clinics, whatever it is, just for initial triaging of various different, health issues and concerns. And I realized I hit a wall. I was like, my gosh, I have no idea what the insurance billing issues are around this, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of those things, I think, where you have to kind of find the right people, find the right approach. And it was a little bit humbling, where I was literally running a million miles an hour, like muscle memory downstream, downrange on this, and had a member of Congress, seem very interested in it. And she stumped us hard in terms of some homework that we're currently working on now, in terms of how do we get this in the hands of a lot of the free clinics and things that are out there now to support the clinicians, their training and development, and some of the things they do. And overconfidence can be dangerous in that regard, so being able to, quickly take a step back and make that adjustment, I think, is key.
All I can say to stuff like that is, wow. It's a bit overwhelming just listening to the complexity that you have to deal with in order for something good to come into society. Like it, we're fortunate to have you fighting the good fight for us, for sure. We are hopping into a commercial break though, Jordon. And when we come back, I'm hopeful you can tell us the name of your favorite horse. Ed's favorite horse's name is Ed. So we're hoping, we're looking forward to yours though. We're looking forward to yours. Great. We'll be right back.
We'll get back to the rest of the episode in just a moment, but first, a word from our presenting sponsor, TaleoConnects.com. As a manager, you know how important it is to solve issues right the first time. If you don't, you risk wasting precious time, money, and resources on things that could make the problem even worse. That is why at Taleo, we start by getting to the root cause of your specific problem, so that together, we can implement the solution that gets you the results you are looking for the first time. Taleo's unique approach to management consulting and resourcing is focused on building a community of experts that work together to help clients solve complex problems and find success in their businesses. We work collaboratively with you to implement the solution that will solve the root cause of your problem, not just the symptoms of that problem. From management consulting and project management to staff augmentation and resource recruitment, Taleo's trusted team can help you take your organization to the next level. If you're interested in learning more about how Taleo can help you overcome your organization's obstacles and take your business to the next level, visit TaleoConnects.com today.
Welcome back to the Mission Driven Leader podcast. We're here with Jordon Sims, and we're just having a blast being wowed by his fantastic knowledge and experience for bringing things into the world that will allow us to be better. Jordon, what is, everybody needs to know, what is the name of your favorite horse?
Well, since Ed's already taken his, and ours use far less peanut butter to talk, Ed. So actually our favorite horse right now that we are involved with is Obesos, which stands for kisses in Spanish as well too. So Obesos was our Derby horse. We got back into it. So I grew up on a thoroughbred farm in Northern California. My mom ran it. My dad was kind of the brain behind a lot of the pedigree stuff and breeding that we did in California. And he partnered years ago, way too much detail, with a gentleman by the name of George Pope back in the 80s. And their goal was to come up with a California bred Derby winner at the time. It was unheard of, right, to do anything outside of Kentucky. So he got involved in that and grew up with my parents. I think I'd wake up in the middle of the night. I'd actually go to sleep in the back of our truck, like, in a sleeping bag, camping style, because they would leave at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, hauling horses down to Southern California, wherever else we were hauling to. And I'd wake up at a racetrack, and that's how I grew up. But Obesos is our favorite horse now. My dad finally got back into it. We got out of the business for a while. All of us left, the kids left, and everything else as well. And as my dad kind of got into his later years, he was missing it a little bit, and got back into it with some colleagues of ours. And we got involved with Obesos and about 5 other horses as well too. And Obesos ran the Derby 2 years ago, finished 4th. We're pretty proud of them. And then just this last year ran the Breeders' Cup in Keeneland, which was a great experience. These were bucket list races that after years, literally decades of us racing, we did okay, but things we had never, it is such just a lightning in the bottle kind of, long shot in getting a horse into these things. He ran in the World Thoroughbred Championships, the Breeders' Cup in Keeneland back in October. It was really great taking my kids and my wife to that as well too. And I had to remind my kids in the paddock, I was telling Ed about this when we were there, that this is not normal. Like, you need to...
Wow. Can Ed and I be your kids and go with you next time? Or is that legal? I don't know.
I think it's certainly legal. I think the question is whether he would do it or not. Yeah, totally.
Oh,
I think that's
right.
a good question.
I knew there was something in there.
Although you have my favorite horse wrong.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the story is, when I was growing up, my parents used to like going to the New York racetracks, Aqueduct and Belmont. Belmont is a beautiful, beautiful racetrack. And during the first Kentucky Derby that I was aware of, my dad said, "Hey, you can pick out a horse that you like." And I picked out a horse named Canonero II because I loved the name. It was like a 30-1. I mean, it was not supposed to win. First time it ran, it won in the first time I saw it running, it won the Derby, and I ended up making a good amount of money off of that bet. So I always thought that when you bet on horses, you win. So Canonero II is a horse I will always love, in addition to Mr. Ed, for obvious reasons.
Well, okay, good. Because I would hate that I let you down with the naming of your horse.
Never.
I think that's maybe one of our activities that we should do is go to the horse races, Ed, because I also love that, and I'm terrible at making selections, but
let's ask Jordon. What have you learned about organizations and leadership from the horse business?
I think we might have lost him for a second.
We lost. Wow. So
maybe he wasn't happy with your comment on Mr. Ed.
Canonero II. Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
Yeah. As we're waiting for Jordon to rejoin us, though, I know that you were actively involved in supporting him with getting the bill crossed for program management. Any thoughts or observations I'm actually in the midst of building a bill for Canada right now.
Okay.
And we're taking it to Senate right away. And I was just wondering any tidbits you have for coming into this role, and, getting all that great support from Jordon, but as a layman, trying to help move the forward that you can give me for the bill that I'm putting forward.
Well, I think you're a natural for it. I think the most important thing, and Jordon, when he comes back, maybe he can comment on it. I think one of the most important capabilities is building relationships. Everything, particularly in the government world, right? But really in organizations and life in general, so much comes down to the relationships, comes down to trust, comes down to the desire to collaborate together. So I think, I think one of the most important skills is to get out there. When I was appointed, when I was brought down to Washington to start up what ended up becoming NASA's Academy for Program, Project, and Engineering Leadership, I got into my office in DC. I realized I knew nothing. I knew no one. There's no books that tell you how to create an academy in 1991 in terms of project management. So what I did with the boss that I had, Frank Hoban, became a wonderful mentor. He took me to every field center at NASA, every single one of them. He introduced me to the heads of project management. He introduced me to the heads of program control, the business people, the money people, and he introduced me to the systems engineering community. And he said, talk to them, listen to them. They'll tell you what they need, and they will give you what you need. And that was the best advice I ever got. So I think anytime you're trying to influence something, it's around the relationships. You want to take time to meet people, talk to people, go out to lunch, sit around the table, have nice drinks together. That's what I think you need to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ed, for that. Jordon, we had lost you for a second. I was just no, it's all good.
Something we said? Is it something that Laurel said to offend you,
Laurel,
Jordon?
Just you, Ed. Just you, as usual.
Yeah.
But,
I try to filter him as much as possible, Jordon, but sometimes he still talks. It's like, what the heck?
It's a big Apple security patch update today. It's working really well. So love the world of software.
It's excellent. It's excellent. Yeah.
No wrinkles.
Yeah. We were just talking about how I've got a team and we're trying to put a bill forward here in Canada, and we actually have been accepted by Senate. They're going to put it forward. We've got some senators. They're going to put it forward for us. So it was all a new world to me. I don't know why I didn't think of you to pick your brain on what I was doing and how I was doing it, but we made it there anyways.
Yep.
So that's exciting stuff. It's called Noah's Law. It's for the betterment of women, children, and innocent people.
Awesome.
But anyways, I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah.
But I know that we wanted to change gears slightly and talk about a few other things that you're doing, and one of the areas that I'm passionate about is female leadership. And you were doing some work with the American Management Association. Is that?
We just started working with them. Yeah, they just held a big,
Okay.
it's not just them. We have several clients that are very focused on this. But yeah, they just had a women's leadership conference, specifically bringing together a lot of the human capital leadership in the federal government, specifically women in key roles, kind of as what we call informally as CHICOs, or Chief Human Capital Officers.
Chicos? I like that.
Yes.
Chicos. I'm going to call myself a Chico going forward. Okay. So why don't
Another
you tell us a
nickname
little bit
we
about
have
that?
for you.
And the list goes on. Could you tell us a little bit about the intention of that and what is sparking your energy in supporting it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think like AMA is the Women's Leadership Conference. We have another client, ISACA, who's a global, similar structure as like a PMI that you're familiar with, Laurel, but a global membership certification association. They have a foundation within the nonprofit itself called She Leads Tech, as well too. And actually, they just participated in a large White House roundtable and input session as well, just on a key focus that the government has right now, specifically in cyber, tech, data, privacy, emerging technologies, AI, et cetera. How do we get more women involved in these roles specifically, and then at the leadership levels as well too? And I think it's great. I think it's important. One of the things Ed and I talk about quite a bit when we talk about the kind of navigating the future of work, aspects. There's some now dated, I have to say, Ed, I mean, our colleagues Tom Malone and others at MIT have done some studies on what makes a team, for example, like why I think this is important, Laurel. To be perfectly honest with you, it's like, why are some teams more successful than others? That was kind of the entering question and argument, right? Hypothesis, just a curiosity point. As they started looking around, they said, well, teams that have people that, and I'm not doing the study justice, obviously, here in a short session. You can look this up. They did an HBR, Harvard Business Review article on it, and a few other publications on it as well too, back in like 2017 or so. I think they updated it. But teams that have more participation, for example, right? So 10 people on the team, not being dominated by one or two, if everybody's participating and contributing, those teams tend to do better, right? Okay, great. Not, a little bit of a yawn factor there, nothing really, amazing, right? Okay, let's move on to the next one. And so they started looking at other stuff. And what they started doing is they started covering up people's face and only so you could see their eyes, right? And so the people that could, exactly, and I would do that for you if I was not in full submarine mode with no camera here, my windowless submarine, but covering everything up except for the eyes. And the people that could kind of tell what somebody was thinking or read the language through the eyes, right? Those teams did better than others, right? Were more successful statistically. So good day, bad day, we all have that, right? As leaders, you see that. You never know what's behind the scenes always, right? Somebody may have a challenge at home, personal challenge, professional challenge, family members, sick dog, horse doesn't win the Derby, whatever the situation is, right? There's always something that's in the way. And I always joke with that, having an engineering background, and Laurel, you'd appreciate this as a technical as well too, is people are always the hardest part of any situation. People, electricity, water, they all take the path of least resistance. They're the principal contributor to all things that are complex in anything you undertake in an organization. I can build a bridge to Hawaii from wherever you're sitting. It will always work. The math will work. It'll never have a good day, bad day, non-negotiable work. So reading the mind through the eyes made the teams more successful. The third one was teams with more women were more successful. Not a mixture.
Well, I could have told you that. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Exactly. Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Not a mixture, not a certain ratio, not a certain proportion, just sheer volume. Teams with more women on it tended to do better, right? It's kind of the third factor that they found. And can you guess why that is, out of curiosity?
Look at the Mission Driven Leader podcast. 67% of our team are women.
There you go.
Yeah, we're nailing it. Gee, what a good question. Women use a lot of empathy when they're thinking about things. They tend to listen a lot more. They really observe how people are responding.
They read the mind through the eyes better.
What did you say?
They were getting it more accurate on reading the mind through the eyes. The women were specifically, right? So, and it comes back to what Ed said. It's relationship driven. It's people driven. It's how do you the value, 85, 90% now roughly of all the value in the S&P 500 is based on intangibles. It's the ability to make decisions, trust and collaboration, learning. It's not the inventory. It's not the product on the shelf. It's a bit provocative, to the B school when Ed and I talk about this, because yes, balance sheets are important. You need to have that in an organization, but it may only be telling you about 15, 20% of what's actually driving the value in your organization. And maybe things you can't see, touch, taste, and feel. And a lot of those are driven by people and their interactions, right? So that's why I think there's a really strong role for women to play, and an increasing value for organization for women in leadership specifically is because they have that ability to read the mind through the eyes. Like you said, they do think more empathetically. I think overall that is a foundational driver behind human-centered design, and which is, again, you take it to the next daisy chain, along that ripple effect, and that's what your product development, product management, design comes from a customer and user experience base, right? Whether it's software, hardware, products, services, et cetera. There is a better tuning and alignment with the customer journey, so to speak, and the persona in terms of what you're trying to get an outcome from. I think that's pretty powerful stuff when you think about it. I led the integration, or was part of the team that led the integration specifically for women in submarines, back in around the 2010, 2011 timeframe in the U.S. Navy. I had to become oddly, again, talking about being a quick study, just picking things up that you're not normally exposed to. I had to become an expert on the occurrence rate between ectopic pregnancies and appendectomies in males. That was not something I expected to pick up along my travels, but it had to come up because we slowly found out, we pulled the string on it. Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program is obviously a technical environment. Engineering degrees are the overall, highly valued, coveted entry point. We wanted those technical folks coming in and technical minds coming in. Over half of our technical degrees in the U.S. from our undergrad college systems, public and private, were going to women, and we were not tapping into that environment and that community as well too. So it's just the technical mindedness, I think, is increasing. We have shortages, at least in my world specifically, and this is global. The amount of cyber roles and cyber gaps in a roughly $6 trillion and growing industry are needed. We don't have women adequately involved in those because they are a product-driven environment specifically that has users, analysts, stakeholders on the back end of those in terms of what's being secured and what's being driven. So we're losing all those connections, and I think that a lot of that really makes a big difference when you get more women involved in those roles. So it's been a key thing. Like I tell Ed all the time, the future, when people ask us about the future of workplace, workforce, kind of the W cube factor. I tell him the future's female every time.
He does.
He
tells me that all. He even calls me at all kinds of hours. Sometimes after midnight, says, "Hey Ed, the future is female." I said, "Oh, thank you, Jordan. I appreciate that phone call."
My camera's off, so I can't blink to indicate my safety. But I am married and have 2 daughters and was in the Navy, so I follow orders very well, obviously. But the future is female, so I think that's.
And there's been a lot of the Google, right? The Google study, Project Aristotle. The whole Aristotle thing. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You get that through the exchange of people, and I think that's really true. I wonder if we can segue into that future a little bit, because you have a unique vantage point. You said, as I heard it summarized, the government is usually asking you for tapping into subject matter expertise of people who can help them get closer to where they need to be. Industry is often asking you we have expertise, but how do we get it out there? And so I think, you have a unique opportunity. This notion of the future of work, what do you think is coming down the road? What are the things we need to be aware of that are most important for success as an individual and working in an organization?
Yeah, and that's good, great. I mean, geez, where do you even go with that? That's that covers a lot, Ed. But I think
Laurel pays me to ask these great questions. Just in case it's
so
not
good.
apparent.
I just sit here and smile a lot.
I am worth every penny that I'm paid.
Yeah. I think to keep that, I mean, because that could go anywhere, Ed, to be perfectly honest with you. I think to keep it focused on the world that I work in and kind of eat, sleep, drink, and breathe, every day, which is the intersection of the public and private sector, right? We are seeing globally probably a record level of increased collaboration, partnership between the private and public sector that we've never seen before. I think that line's getting blurred, and that's changing the way work happens at a very macro level when you think kind of nationally, in terms of just the national economics of it all. We are technology driven now. We are digital driven, software driven everywhere we go. That's why the bulk of our work is cybersecurity related in some way, shape, or form. To a lesser extent, privacy and data and security, but it's all typically cyber issues. The government realizes they just don't have the expertise the private sector has in these areas. They never will, can't afford it, will never have that leading edge capability. So creating these mechanisms, Ed, I think, which kind of illustrates the value of relationships and people. We see it all the time. We have joint collaborative efforts happening in the government. The National Security Agency for the U.S. government, probably the most secretive, secret squirrel, dark black box here in Fort Meade, Maryland, just up the road from where we live at, as you know, has actually opened a cyber collaboration center. And for the first time, they're making a conscientious effort to declassify and release as much information as possible on the problems they're trying to solve, to tap into the expertise in industry, to be able to say, hey, there is a tool or a widget, a way to fix or solve that maybe we didn't know about. Or there are data sets out there that we didn't know about. We have an amazing client who maps the internet every 15 minutes. I hate talking to them on a Friday afternoon because they see things that nobody else sees flowing around the world, and where it's flowing from and where it's flowing to. And it makes you look at every electronic device you have as like a dirty syringe jar that you just don't want to touch, at some point. But that expertise and that ingenuity and that innovation is happening outside the public sector, and they're being very creative on ways that they bring it in. And that's changing the way those organizations work, how they structure some of their strategies, how they work with the government, et cetera. And I think that's changing a way of work closest to where we are right now. I think for us, talking about the broader macro piece, again, it comes back to the intangibles, plain and simple, right? It's the people in the organization. We will always chase technology. Technology will always be associated with the future of work. I remind organizations all the time, we can install all of the technology you have in mind tomorrow with the flip of a switch. All it does is do a stepwise baseline lift in terms of overall kind of productivity. The competitive advantage still comes from the people, and those people kind of fall into three buckets of what they drive for intangibles. It's decision making. So that's all of your speed to market. How quickly can we make a decision? How quickly can we get things done? What's our confidence factor in getting those done? Everything along that aspect. The knowledge aspects, what's the learning capability of the organization? Do I have an inexperienced team that I can use technology to give them exposure to the last 40 or 50 once in a career type projects so they can be smarter instantly off the, right from the start? Or do I have a team that has 40 years of experience and is the best there is, and I need to get things off their plate so they can think bigger and deeper, right? So do I know what the learning need is for my team, right? And that comes back to the decision and leadership aspect. And the last one is trust, right? And I think or culture, excuse me. Culture would be my third bucket. Culture is built on trust and collaboration in the organization. So a lot of the things we see coming out now, I think from a technology standpoint, aren't what I call one-hit wonders. The paradigm shifters we see coming out are a smattering and smashing together of 5, 6, 7, 8 ideas. And that doesn't happen inside an organization unless you have collaboration and trust to kind of build that snowball effect, right? That creates some of these paradigm shifting technologies and capabilities in the organization. Google's a great example of it. I think, Laurel, I think you might be exposed to it. Ed, I know we have been as well too. Great example. Like, they have to pitch a new idea internally, right? Before anything goes out of house, so to speak, for public consumption. And they want to see, as far as how you rack, stack, prioritize which one to pursue and go after. It's based on who picks up your solution internally and uses it to optimize their work. So as you start seeing some of those features kind of snowball and those ideas come together, it's not just the iPod, it's not just iTunes, it's not just the MP3 format, it's not just, right, you think about all the things that come together. There's about 9 life-changing patents that come together into what's basically changed the entire way we consume media as a society, right? And that's culture in an organization, because it's collaboration and trust and being able to share those ideas. Again, going back to the fact, I may not know all the pieces and parts of this puzzle. How do I get them and fill them in from across the organization?
Jordon, we're starting to get close to the end of our time with you, which is very
Already?
unfortunate.
We just
I'm
started.
This. I know. Didn't we?
We need more time.
This is Ed's favorite part of my talk, where it ends.
No, we're not quite done with you yet, though. We're not quite done.
He is really good at endings. Yeah, he is really good. Watch this.
Then I can't. Yeah. Then I can't wait. Will I be crying?
Stick around for the ending. Yeah.
Just really quickly, if you could walk us through Walk Me really quickly, and just kind of share briefly what would be good for people to know about, so that they can introduce it and incorporate it.
Yeah, actually, I'll give you two real quick, just because Walk Me and another that we're working on quite closely. Walk Me is a great piece of technology, and they've been pretty eye-opening for me. San Francisco headquarters based, actual corporate global headquarters out of Israel. Amazing amount of technology coming out of Tel Aviv, obviously, as everybody knows. But they've come up with a way to basically agnostically overlay all of the different tools and tech that are in your organization. And Walk Me is kind of short for Walk Me Through It. But it's a new category, to your point on like government struggling with this. It's a new category of technology known as digital adoption. So how do I drive the adoption and the uptake of my tools? You think about all the things that an organization procures because it's going to save us time. It's a new widget. It's going to be able to help us do whatever it is. It takes time for people to learn how to do it. And no organization, public or private, ever takes into account the schoolhouse aspect of how to teach people how to use all the tools that they continue to add to their stack, right? Into their toolkit. So they overlay that stuff. They basically focus on measurability, what features, whether it's your travel system, whether it's requesting time off, whether it's overlaying a portal that you have customer facing where people are requesting technical support for projects and programs, Laurel, like coming out of your organization, or things that you need to do to request technical service and support out in the oil fields of Calgary, whatever it is, right? They basically have the ability to measure what's being used, how it's being used, where people might be falling off in the process and path, removes what they call the time tax of things, right? And automates daily functions. Whereas Laurel can set it up and say, I need to request a day off. I don't need to go into 3 different platforms, check my Outlook, do this, do that. I can click one button and request that day off and puts it in through the system on an automated fashion. So we hear about robotic process automation, RPA. We hear about all these other things out there. It kind of smashes all of that together into one platform, which has been changing the way people look at it. And governments as a whole have a hard time with, or have a benefit from this, because it basically means surveys are dead, right? There is no subjective opinion as to how the technology is being used. It's literally hard, fast, high fidelity, granular user data on how things are being used, how much of it's being consumed, better, more efficient procurement, tailored to the way you use it, et cetera. The other one that's changing the way, I think, and that's a future of work issue, I think, right? Where it's increasing productivity and optimizing the workforce. The other piece is Bluescape. And I highly recommend anybody and everybody, especially in the project world, Laurel, to check out Bluescape. We just did a partnership between them and Scaled Agile. It is literally, for the US government, the only DoD authorized and FedRAMP authorized cloud service, browser-based collaboration platform. So any and all tools you can possibly imagine that you might use, whether it's live documents, Google Docs, Zoom meetings, Teams, spreadsheets, Splunk dashboards, web portals, whatever it is, they solve what I would call the place problem, right? So when you have a problem, whether it's cyber incident response, you need to review project postmortems, you need your contract team to have visibility on things. No longer do we all come together in the same brick and mortar building. So it is a secure platform for the government. It works across the entire classification stack. They used it for the Olympics for security, because you could have 12 different agencies and countries in it. And you can bring your own tools into it as well too. And it plays that sponge so that you don't have to go check your email, check your spreadsheet, check your Splunk dashboard, check your web portal, check whatever it is. It is all everything in one spot. And again, it's starting to remove the time tax from that and bring people together anywhere, anytime, any device, asynchronously or synchronously. And that's been changing the way a lot of people work. And it's been a huge uptake, specifically for us in the US, across the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. And now our civilian agencies are beginning to look at it, because it's really the most dynamic way to bring together the most challenging part of government, which is the interagency domain. When we have 3 or 4 agencies working together on something, not everybody's on the same platform, same brick and mortar building. We have 90%, maybe 85% of our federal workforce don't work in DC. So when you think about that for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, for example, how do they get people together across all their business centers to collaborate and do a Kanban board on a new release or whatever that looks like?
Well, and the security components that come up with those things on
Yeah.
top of that are daunting. And I think at times the number one reason why collaboration breaks down
Yeah.
is the fear of security protocol. So
There's a lot of other
I've already made notes, so I'm
yeah,
excited.
other whiteboards out there. They just don't have the secure by design investment up front. But like I said, this works across the entire classification stack for any government, and it's been pretty powerful. A pretty amazing thing I saw was the UK actually hosted and convened 43 nations of the heads of space and air force, specifically on their climate change summit, and they did the whole thing in Bluescape because they were just, how do you bring 43 nations together at that level? And they were.
Ed, did you get a call for that one? I didn't get a call for it. So
I was going to say, Laurel, that I know that part of Jordon's business is recommending SMEs to the world,
True.
and I've never been recommended for anything through Jordon. What about you, Laurel?
No, I feel like there's some work to be done on Jordon's
Anyway,
side.
we forgive you, Jordon, since you're inviting us to the Kentucky Derby and your boat. And
Yes,
all that
yeah.
I do have a question though for you. I have to ask you.
Okay, it has to be quick, and then we got to.
It's going to be very, very quick.
Okay.
Again, being in the submarine program, very amazing. I was going to ask you about that, but really, you've always talked about people who you've learned from, that you continue to learn from, and so I really want to ask the mentoring question of who stands out for you that you learned from in terms of who you are today and the success as a leader that you have. Is there a mentor that you could acknowledge, and just what did they do?
Oh, geez, Ed.
I know that's a big curveball, and you've had so many people, but you're really an example of you leverage your success through others and your lessons from others. And I'll make it easier for you. Don't mention me. I don't want to be, the mentor.
I'll give
or anything
three quick answers on that, because I was trying to wrap this up. Just kind of three different points along the career trajectory. One was my first submarine, my first captain at the time, Commander Dennis White. Amazing guy. My first exposure, here I thought I was going to be James Bond wearing a white tuxedo and shooting missiles and sneaking and peeking. And, he's reminding us we're nothing but a bunch of project managers, and it was pretty interesting. But he always reminded me, and the one thing that's stuck with me today is leaders always set standards and tone. Everything is watched. We're a small group of officers on a boat, standards and tone, everything you do, a piece of standards and tone gets set across that boat and how it operates with everything every one of us does. So just being mindful of how you express frustration, how you deal with frustration and setbacks, all that stuff, right? Standards and tone, and that always sets how things happen within an organization, can be tied back to the tone that's set, and what has a leader done to set that standard and tone. The second one, back to Laurel's point on just kind of women in leadership, working for Kay Granger, tough woman to work for. Knows exactly what she wants, how she wants it, and is driven. I mean, and is not in a lot of headlines because she's doing a lot of things behind the scenes. First woman to be on the city council in Fort Worth, first woman to be mayor, first woman to be in the Texas delegation in the House, first woman to be chairwoman of defense appropriations, first woman to be the chairman of the Republican woman, to be chairwoman of the full appropriations committee. And I probably missed a bunch of firsts in there. I've seen that woman accomplish so many things, and it's been really eye-opening to see how she's accomplished that with such utter just class and grace and strategy in terms of how she does it. I can tell you some funny stories when we have some more time on that as well too. And the last one is, most recently we brought on Vice Admiral TJ White, who's a former commander, 10th Fleet, Navy Cyber, and stood up our Cyber National Mission Force here at Fort Meade. He's been supporting our team, advising a lot of our clients. Probably one of the most strategic, deep thinkers, literally, that our nation has, probably in all things cyber and emerging technology. I have learned an immense amount from him in terms of how to connect the dots back to strategic outcomes with some of these very difficult to decipher technologies and capabilities and what they mean, from a macro standpoint. But it's been a two-way street, right? I mean, he spent 30 plus years in the Navy, not a dumb guy by any means, right? Obviously. But just, it's amazing how he learns from me in terms of the business standpoint of what we do, And we reciprocate with each other in terms of kind of some of the strategic points as well too. So it's kind of a dual mentor mentee. We often shift roles, Ed, back and forth, depending on what he's trying
That's
to learn
great.
from as he kind of learns the world on this side of the fence after spending so much time in the government.
I love that 360-degree learning. You learn from all over, and I love you're not James Bond, Jordon. You're a project manager.
Yeah, that was a huge blow to my ego at the age of in my 20s. I thought I was out there sneaking and peeking and secret squirrel stuff, and here I am doing math and trig in my head and project management with a bunch of guys in a tube underwater.
That sounds very lovely.
Next episode.
Tube in the water. So just one observation. I think just all three of those people were absolutely brilliant. So I feel so fortunate for you to have such an experience in your life to date. And I'm like, I got some pretty cool people, but that's pretty special what you just shared with us. I think the one thing that I really reflected on at the end is that a good mentor is somebody that you follow, you observe, you participate with, but then in turn, they get something from you. And because then that means that you're always working to absorb, adjust, and grow. And if it's a two-way street, man, it becomes even more powerful and
100%.
Palatable for success. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Well said, Laurel. 100%.
Yeah. I am so disappointed that we're coming to the end of our time with you. But before we leave, could you share with the group what you feel is your superpower? We've talked about your mentors, we've talked about your experience, your career, your business. But Jordon Sims, what is Jordon Sims' superpower to the world?
I can answer that one.
Go ahead, Ed.
Your network. You surround yourself with the best, starting with your family, Megan, your daughters, the dog, your friends, and everything you do in work is really with people you have fun with.
That dog's the only ally I have in this house, Ed. It's the only ally.
And as it should be.
It's my favorite kid. I remind my children of that every day. It's the only one that listens to me. So
back to the tube in the water.
It's the network, but that's validating, because I was going to say, I think the one thing that I'm always most proud of is I never really have to say I don't know definitively. I pride myself in the fact that we can always know somebody somewhere, and it's two-way tangible value through that network as well too. So we're finding ways to constantly deliver that value both ways, whether it's the mentor-mentee, like you talked about, Laurel, that dynamic. Or just bringing people together to solve problems. And we're proud of the problems we're solving. Like I said, some of these are of national strategic importance, some of them global, Five Eyes, cyber, stuff that's happening across, partner nations, things of that nature. They are big, complex problems. And we're happy to bring the network to bear on them. It also helps growing up on a racetrack too, because we have to deal with politicians who are used to working with gamblers and degenerates as well too. So
I thought you were going to say you're used to working with shit, but
I'm also used to working with shit from the farm, but that's a different time for a different storyline.
A lot of shoveling.
A lot of shovels. Jordon, I've had a fantastic time with you, and just so many.
You sound surprised.
Cool things that you're doing. Well, I'm always surprised if I have a good time with you, Ed, because you're so tricky. But Jordon, I knew I would have fun with Jordon. Yeah,
absolutely. No, cool thing, and a lot of commonality. I didn't mention it. We don't have time, but I actually owned a racehorse years and years and years ago too. Yeah, but called Union Boss. But we won't.
Union Boss.
Yeah,
I owned tickets for things that I bet on horses.
We need to get to the track. We need to get to the track.
I would love to go to the track. Yeah,
let's do that.
You guys can show me your wares.
Tip for the listeners: if you ever want to become a millionaire in the horse racing business, you just have to start with $1 billion.
Okay. Well, I'll keep working on that one then. I'll keep working on it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Jordon. Ed, is there any kind of leaving notes that you want to just share with the audience before we call it a day?
Go Oilers.
I love you. You're the best. You're the best. Thanks, Jordon. Thanks, Ed. And I can absolutely not wait to check out all of these notes that I took to go back to my clients with. You rock. Thank you.
Sounds awesome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, everybody.
Absolutely. I'd
Bye.
also say if you want to know more about the future, connect with Jordon and I on the future of work. It's always happening.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Good call, Ed. And that's with Columbia University, isn't it?
Yep.
Columbia University. You're always invited.
Fantastic. I'm ready. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Mission Driven Leader podcast presented by TaleoConnects.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review wherever you listen to the show.